Welcome everybody for the seminar of SIAM PDE. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce the speaker of the day, Yann Brognier. So Yann Brognier holds a prestigious full research position as research director at the CNRS and is currently holding his position at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris. Before that, he was professor at Paris 6, which is now known as Sorbonne University, and at the École Normale Supérieure. And as a research director, he held position at the University of Nice, the École Polytechnique in Palaiseau, before joining again the prestigious École Normale Supérieure. The main research area of Yann Brognier is partial differential equation with a special interest for fluid mechanics and optimal transport theory. His achievement has been recognized in several occasions. He was a plenary speaker at ECM 2003, sectional speaker at ICM in 2002, and he was awarded the Petit Dormy Prize by the French Academy of Sciences in 2005. Yann Brognier will talk today about optimal transport for matrix-valued measures. Yann, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexis, for the introduction. And so it's a pleasure for me, to deliver this lecture. So I particularly thank Elena Nussenswijk for the invitation. I would like to present a work which has been published in SIAM Journal of Mathematical Analysis, and together with Dmitry Vorotnikov, which is currently at the University of Coimbra in Portugal. And sorry, yeah, that's right. So let me see. Yeah, yes, there's something special here. Okay. Then I have to do some a little bit awkward manipulation because I use old-fashioned slides. And I have to move a little bit, and it seems that I cannot do that with the sure. So this is a reference of the paper, and the topic is about optimal transport of fields of symmetric non-negative matrices. And then if you have a little bit of geometrical training, you could think about Riemannian matrix, because a Riemannian matrix is a field of symmetric positive matrix, if it's not degenerate, non-negative, which is possibly degenerate. Another example is quantum operators, at least when you see their finite dimensional counterparts. Otherwise, you have to extend that to operators. And for more practical application, you have fields of covariance matrices. For instance, just to give you an example, I remember that in weather forecasting, in order to consider the variability of the weather, you have a field. Let's say if you do global weather forecasting on the Earth, so attached to each point on the Earth, you have covariant matrices that is related to the uncertainty of the problem. And therefore, you have to deal with huge fields of covariance matrices. And in the recent years, there has been a lot of works related to these topics. And let me just quote a few of them. So on the strictly speaking quantum mechanics side, I would quote in particular the work of Eric Carlen and Jan Maas on one side, where thanks to these kind of ideas, they could generalize some ideas like log Sobolev inequalities in the quantum framework. And also François Gols and Thierry Paul were able to do this kind of optimal transportation methods in order to prove the mean field convergence of system of quantum particles with completely new estimates, which are independent on the size of the quantum on the Planck constant. So which means these convergence results are uniform with respect to the quantum to classical limits. And this was completely new. There was no result of this sort before. And I should focus on the essential contribution of the group around Chen and Georgiou, not Tannenbaum, with a lot of practical motivation coming from electrical engineering. So anyway, this is also rather closely connected with the concept of free probabilities, which extend the standard probability measure. And this started a quite long time ago in the 90s already. You have a concept of optimal transportation done by Philippe Bian and Dan Voiculescu. And one of the leaders at the moment is Dmitry Shlartenko from UCLA. And there are, of course, many other people. So sorry for not quoting everybody. And there are also an interesting relationship with non-commutative geometry that I don't master so well. But if you look even at all the book by Alain Cohen about non-commutative geometry, you see that there are some definition of distances that can be seen as non-commutative version of optimal transport theory. Okay, so now let me start the talk. And the main point of our paper with Dmitry was to introduce a good distance between two given fields of symmetric matrices, G0 and G1, using the following formula, which is like a little bit like control theory style. So if you have two such fields, G0 and G1, you define the square distance between them as the infimum of this space-time integral. So we assume that everything takes place on RD, although we could extend that to a more general situation. But let's consider the Euclidean space. And you have two occurrences of the matrices G, which is sandwiched by a vector field V here and by a symmetric matrix U here. And this control, V and U, are the thing to be minimized. And they are driving the field of matrices by the following equation. So you have the time derivative of the matrix G. So the matrix G, of course, depends on time and space, plus the symmetrized gradient of G applied to V. So V is a vector field. When you apply G to V, you get a vector. And therefore, this is the symmetrized gradient. So the gradient of a vector is like a square matrix. And you have the symmetrized matrix here. And you have a right-hand side where you just have the product. So here there shouldn't be two dots, just one. You have just a product of GU, which is a symmetrized product. So this is a product of two matrices. So of course the product has no reason to be symmetric, and you have to symmetrize it. And so this is the driving mechanism for the field G. And of course you assume that at the initial time 0 and the final time 1, this field match the data G0 and G1. So this is a very simple-minded idea. And for some reason, we call that the Kantorovich-Burow's distance. So Kantorovich will be very clear as a name in the later slides. And Burow's refers to a metric which is used in information theory and which is related to the fact that you don't consider any kind of motion by a vector field. So you just look at this kind of reaction term. Okay, so, therefore in this talk, well, actually I was a little bit too lazy to enter into the details of the paper. So I prefer to focus on the genesis of the formula in the global framework of optimal transportation. And I hope this will be interesting enough for you. So to do that, I have to start from the beginning. So sorry if you are very familiar with classical optimal transportation, but this is a reminder if you are maybe a short course if you never saw that before. So the standard optimal transport of densities of probability measured over the Euclidean space can be defined in probabilistic words in the following way. The square of the distance between two densities of probability ρ0 and ρ1 over Rd is defined to be the infimum of the expectation of the square distance between two random variables living in Rd, x and y, so that the law of the first random variable is ρ0 of x dx, and the law of y is ρ1 of y dy. Okay, so that's a probabilistic definition. And from the historical viewpoint, from the historical viewpoint, this idea goes back to Gaspard Monge in 1780. And actually, Monge was considering the case where you don't have two. So this is MK1. So the distance MK1, you do the same thing, but there is no square. You just look at the distance between x and y. And this has been revisited in the mid-40s by Leonid Kantorovich, which was very influential also in mathematical economics. Actually, Kantorovich is one of the few mathematicians who was awarded the Nobel Prize in economics in the 70s. Although he was from the Soviet school, which is a little bit strange, actually, at the time of the Cold War. Okay, so that's the story. And let's say, I think there is nothing else, yes. Okay, now there is another possible definition, which is the so-called hydrodynamical definition of the optimal transport distance, which is usually named after Benhamou and myself, Jean-David Benhamou and myself. So this Benhamou, Brenier, or BB, let's call it BB, the BB formulation of the MK2 distance. So it's the same distance as before, but it's written in I don't know why I have this, yes, sorry. You have the formula of this, the following style. So you have the description by a fluid. So you have a fluid of density field rho, depending on time and space, which is moving between the initial density ρ0 and the final density ρ1 with a velocity field v, depending on t and x. And what you minimize is the time integral of the kinetic energy up to the factor 2. So the kinetic energy is just rho times the v square, and you integrate that space and time. And of course, the density and the velocity field are related by the continuity equation, which is a conservation law. And of course, the density is non-negative. And the advantage of this formulation are the following. The first thing is, although it's not obvious at the first glance, this is a convex formulation in the sense that this minimization problem, it convex with respect to rho and not v, but rho v. So the momentum rho field rho v and rho are involved in the convex way. Why? Because the continuity equation, of course, is linear. It's dt rho plus divergence q. And this quantity is also q squared divided by rho, and this is a joint convex function of rho and v. So that's the first advantage of this formulation. But also, it's obvious from the formulation that it's super flexible to generalization. Because, of course, you have a very simple Lagrangian, rho v square, and a very simple transport equation. So we can imagine very easily that we can do a lot of generalization out of this formula. And finally, another advantage of that, it is clearly related to Riemannian geometry, especially if you remember the work of Arnold, the Vladimir Arnold that I didn't mention explicitly here, about the geometric interpretation in terms of Riemannian geometry of the Euler equation of incompressible fluids. And that's a kind of a similar spirit. And on top of that, Riemannian geometry can be passed by a much more general theory of metric spaces. And this has been done by a lot of works of the Italian school, in particular by Ambrosio, Gili, and Savare. And there is an entire book on this issue. And finally, let me also recommend the lecture, the reading of the book by Cédric Villani, which is a good description of all these things. Okay, so now let me just make a very short remark on the PDE level. So the optimality equation of this simple problem are the following. So the velocity field is necessarily a potential velocity field, curl-free. So you can write it as a gradient of some potential theta. And this potential obeys the Hamilton-Jacobi equation. And then it's a classical calculus to derive from that the fact that the equation for rho and rho v are just the Euler equation for a pressureless gas. So in some sense, we are in a subset of the Euler world with the most trivial pressure law, no pressure at all. So it is quite funny to observe that the Euler equation have been introduced 20 years after Monge started the optimal transport problem. And of course, the model of Euler is richer in some sense. But it is not obvious at the first glance because the formulation of Monge was not based on the fluid mechanics idea. I mean, okay, so this is the first step in the discussion. Now there is a variant. So a variant is a popular concept at the moment. So there is a variant when you have density fields which are not normalized, not probability measure. That is when the total mass of rho 0 and rho 1 are not the same. And the conservation law, we use the continuity equation enforce the conservation of mass. So if we have density of different mass, we cannot rely on the regular continuity equation. And there is a rather recent generalization of the BB formula by adding a source term in the framework. So when we do the minimization, we also include a source term a little bit together with the velocity. And in the transport equation, we add this source term. And this source term enables us to move from a density to another one, and at the same time by changing the mass. And this is a rather elegant generalization. And surprisingly enough, it was discovered quite recently, essentially 3 years ago. I think the paper have been published 3 years ago. It started like 5-6 years ago. And it was simultaneously discovered and independently discovered by 3 groups. One in Portugal with Kondratiev, Saint-Jean, and Vorotnikov, the same Vorotnikov as my Vorotnikov. A group in French, German team with Schiza, Perret, Schmitzer, and Bialar, and the Italian-German team with Liero, Milke, and Savare. The same Savare as mentioned before. And of course, this is the last paper where the analysis has been pushed very far, and the paper was published by Invenciones. So, okay, so now this seems to be a minor modification of the previous situation, but actually it's quite subtle and quite rich, and this will turn out to be essential for our discussion later on. Well, just a word on the optimality equation. So once again, the velocity is a potential, a velocity field, and the source term is also equal to the same potential, and therefore you get this funny Hamilton-Jacobi equation, which is not in the usual style of viscosity solution a la Pierre à la Lyons, Crandall events, because this zero order term is not monotonic. And usually in viscosity solution, you take a monotonic source term in order to have the nicer result. So this is a way to see that the Hamilton-Jacobi equation in the framework of optimal transportation is not strictly speaking related to viscosity solution. It is really related to the variational formulation. And it's only when you are addressing issues like regularity theory that as a step, you may have to prove that this is a viscosity solution in some sense. But the viscosity solution is not the primary concept in this framework in a funny way. Okay, so now something I would like to mention, which is important for many reasons. So if you want to transport not density fields, but scalar function, which is not the same thing, you have in the field of shape analysis and image processing a candidate which is the following. So when you have two functions phi0 and phi1, the square distance is given by the space-time integral of the square of the velocity. There is no density here whatsoever. And the field, vector field, is just transporting the scalar function as a scalar function. So there is no, it's not continuity equation. It's not written in divergence form. And that's important. And this basic idea goes back to people like Grenander, Miller, Trouvé, Younes, and was motivated by image processing. But if you look at this distance, it's a degenerate distance. That is, you may have a zero distance between functions which are different from each other. So this is very different from optimal transportation I described before. And this has been observed by Michor and Mumford some years ago. And this was like a shocking result. And actually, this has been fixed a long time ago by adding in the Lagrangian some extra term involving the derivative of V. So if you want a distance, you have to involve the derivative of V in the framework, which is not needed for the classical optimal transportation method. However, this is quite interesting because by doing that, by doing a more general model where you have the V, its gradient in the Frobenius norm, the divergence of V involved, then interestingly enough, this leads to interesting generalization of the famous Kamasa-Horn equation. So the Kamasa-Horn equation fits very well in this framework. And let me mention François-Xavier Viala, one of the people very actively working on the connection between Kamasa-Horn and optimal transportation techniques. Anyway, you can see with this example that if you stick with the L2 metric, there is a huge difference between the transportation of densities, which can be viewed from the differential geometry viewpoint as d-dimensional form. So d is the dimension of the space, and scalar function that can be interpreted as zero differential forms. And therefore, it is not a trivial issue when you do generalization to get a non-degenerate distance. And this is why our paper, we have to work to prove that we get a real distance, that it's not something that can be degenerate and that cannot be used. And we don't have to use derivative we don't have to use the derivative like in this theory of. Okay, now let me move to among this zoo of optimal transport. What is natural to do is to do differential forms. So we saw already transportation of d-dimensional forms, transportation of zero forms. And it's very natural from the physical viewpoint to look at the example of two forms, closed two forms in R3, because closed two forms in R3 are very familiar to us. They are just magnetic fields. So magnetic fields can be written as a two form in 3D. And this is divergence free, which means that it's closed. So B1, dx2, dx3. And then the transport equation is very clearly known. So this is the so-called induction equation, the ideal induction equation, which tells you that the derivative of B should be balanced by the curl of B cross V. And here I use definitely 3D notation. So this can be extended to higher dimension. However, it is not clear what kind of Lagrangian we should choose to do a theory of optimal transportation. And so here it is just a proposal that I worked out some years ago, which is not the only one, but the proposal in itself is maybe not so important, but the idea that I like very much is it's always interesting to see whether there is an interesting physical theory around. Because these problems of optimal transportation are very much related to concrete application, engineering application, and image processing. And well, it is tempting to completely forget about physical models. However, physics and mathematical physics are so rich that they can give us some interesting hints. And let me try to convince you that this is a case for closed-two forms. So my basic physical reference is a beautiful work by Born and Infeld. So this is the famous Max Born of quantum mechanics, designed in 1934, where they wanted to modify the Maxwell equation for reasons that I have no time to explain. And then they defined that with a Lagrangian. And the homogeneous linear part, the homogeneous part of the linear Maxwell equation, that is dTB plus curl of E is 0 and divergence B is 0, which amount to say that BE is a closed two forms in the Minkowski space. But I don't want to give more detail than that. So it's a super nonlinear Lagrangian, very weird. However, it has a very neat geometric structure that I will not describe. And there are two regimes. There is a regime where the parameter lambda, which can be computed according to some rule, as Max Born did. And this parameter can be seen as a very large parameter, and in which case you recover in the limit the linear Maxwell model. And actually, when we expand this Lagrangian with respect to lambda, if lambda is large enough, the leading term will be B squared minus E squared over 2. And therefore, you recover the homogeneous Maxwell equation in vacuum very easily this way. However, there is another interesting regime where lambda goes to 0. So when lambda goes to 0, that looks totally crazy because you see that there is in the Lagrangian the minus lambda minus square EB. So it looks like a total disaster to try to put lambda going to 0. However, you could interpret this term as a penalty term. So as lambda goes to 0, it means that it's okay as long as E and B are orthogonal to each other, pointwise. So when we do that, we are left with a simpler Lagrangian, which is just minus square root of B squared minus C squared, subject to the pointwise condition E dot B 0. Plus the linear differential constraint I already wrote. But look, if B is not degenerate, so if B doesn't vanish, it means that pointwise, you can find a vector V in R3 such that E is written as B cross V. And therefore, when you plug that in the linear part of the Maxwell equation, you get dTB plus curl of B cross V. So you see that the transport equation, which looked to me as a basic principle for the transportation of magnetic field, is really emerging in this Born-Infeld theory. So it's not a primary principle. It's just something that you get in the limits. And when lambda is not 0, you get some extra terms. So in some sense, this shows the richness of some physical models, because I would have never guessed that there is something behind this transport equation otherwise. And it turns out that you can compute the resulting Lagrangian just by substituting B cross V to E, for E, sorry. And then you get this rather strange looking Lagrangian for B and V, which, by the way, you can work out some geometrical interpretation of that. So, yeah, which is related to strings, actually. Anyway, this was just an example to show you how physics could be interesting to look at. And the optimal transportation theory for differential form, in the best of my knowledge, stays largely open. So there has been effort, in particular by Da Coruña and Gangbo, and also Reza Khanlou in the case of contact forms. And I would say that there has been a lot of work, but this is much more related to shape theory in image processing, and in particular, GLONASS and UNESS, which you can see that as transportation of currents, which is, of course, related to differential forms. Okay. So now let me move to the heart of the discussion. But in some sense, let me view fields of symmetric semi-definitive matrices like Riemannian metrics. Okay, because just to get some a little bit of geometrical inspiration. And then there is a very well-known transport equation for a Riemannian metric depending on time. And the equation just tells you that this metric is pushed forward by a family of diffeomorphisms, which are themselves generated by a vector field V. So the vector field V generates a family of diffeomorphisms, and the diffeomorphism push forwards the metric. And then this is the equation you get. So I use the standard notation of Riemannian and Lorentzian geometry with the implicit summation on upper and lower indices. And of course, here, upper and lower indices are very important. They are very different. I mean, they are not describing the same thing. And of course, you can also write this equation in a funny way, in a actually quite interesting way, precisely by substituting for the vector field V, which is a field of tangent vector, by the corresponding field, cotangent field of cotangent vectors, which are given through the metric. So you apply the metric tensor to V, and you get a cotangent vector. And therefore, you get this symmetrized gradient of this nu V. And the remainder can be reorganized thanks to the Christoffel symbol, which is related to the connection, the Levi-Civita connection of the Riemannian metric. And the formula is not too difficult. It's like this. Of course, the Christoffel symbol is quite complicated and involves derivative of V, space derivative of G. So there is no free lunch. Anyway, you have to involve either complicated derivative of V weighted by G like here, or a nicer derivative, but then you have to pay the price with the Christoffel symbol. Anyway, it could be, so this is something I didn't really seriously work out, but it might be useful to think about general relativity in order to guess what could be interesting Lagrangian for these problems. Of course, general relativity is certainly not the direct answer, because in general relativity, everything should be covariant. So if you apply a family of diffeomorphism to the metric, you don't change anything really. So if you want to see something, you should destroy this covariance. So if we guess an interesting Lagrangian, it shouldn't, of course, it cannot be the Lagrangian of general relativity. So in some sense, we have, maybe the idea would be to use general relativity and to do some butchery. So to butcher general relativity in order to get something interesting. So this is what I believe. So, okay, so I discussed recently with François-Xavier Viala, and so of course there are some people having of that. By the way, let me just mention, which is a little bit unrelated, that regular optimal transportation theory has been related to general relativity very recently, in particular by Robert McCann in Toronto, but also in Italy by Mondino and Germany also. And this is a very nice piece of work, but this is unrelated to my discussion, but I just mentioned that. Okay, so another way of addressing our discussion is a recent work that I did myself a few years ago, and which was followed by Vorotnikov in a very nice article, and where Riemannian the optimal transportation of Riemannian metrics pops up in a completely unexpected way by the study of some evolution PDEs and by trying to reduce the solution of the Cauchy problem by convex optimization techniques, which is a very strange idea and a priori totally unrelated to what I discussed before. And once again, I started with one of my favorite equations, with the Euler equation for incompressible fluids, which turns out to be, once again, a kind of master equation for many things. So let me remind you of the Euler equation for divergence vector fields. And the idea is to try to get a solution of the initial value problem by minimizing space-time given a fixed final time capital T, the total kinetic energy of the field among all weak solutions of the Euler equation starting from a given initial condition, V0. So this problem looks totally silly if you stick with the classical formulation of the PDE. Because in some sense, I want to solve the problem by minimizing in the set of solutions of the same problem. So it's totally, in some sense, in the classical framework, there is only one element. So there is no minimization to do. This is totally meaningless. However, the concept of weak solution is so bad or so weak that we know now that there might be a huge amount of weak solution for each given initial condition. And this is an output of the beautiful theory of De Lelis and Székely based on the convex integration. And strictly speaking, the result has been proven by Emil Wiedemann during his PhD with under Székely. So there is a lot of possible solution. So it's not silly to do that. So now, if we work out this problem, it is very easy to write it as a saddle point problem, because the weak formulation can be really easily encoded in terms of Lagrange multiplier, like this way. So this is like an infimum with respect to V and the supremum with respect to A and Q, where Q is a Lagrange multiplier for the divergence-free condition, because when you maximize in Q, of course, this quantity will be plus infinity unless V is divergence-free and tangent to the boundary if there is a boundary. And in a similar way, the same thing happens with the Lagrange multiplier A, which is a field, a time-dependent field of divergence-free vector fields with n value at 0. And here, therefore, when we do the supremum with respect to A, you recover that the supremum is plus infinity unless A is a weak V is a weak solution of the Euler equation with V0 as an initial condition. And I wrote the initial condition in an unusual way, but this is absolutely equivalent to the weak formulation of the problem. And since we have written that as a saddle point problem, of course, we can do weak duality by exchanging the supremum and the infimum, which is not a trivial task because this problem is not convex. So we might have a duality gap by doing this. However, it is very interesting to look at the dual problem because you see that in the dual problem, you do the infimum in V first. And therefore, if you look at the Lagrangian, everything is linear or affine with respect to A and Q. So when you perform first the infimum, you automatically get a concave function of Q and A. And therefore, we are sure that the dual problem is a concave maximization problem. So you started with a non-convex minimization problem, and you get by duality a concave maximization problem. And you can work out the formula quite easily. So the first step is totally trivial, because when you perform the infimum with respect to V, there is no constraint whatsoever on V. So you can do a pointwise minimization of a quadratic form. Of course, the quadratic form is a little bit complicated because it involves grad A, which is a matrix, and more precisely, the symmetric part of grad A. And what you get eventually is -1/2 of the inverse of the identity matrix minus the symmetrized gradient of A to the -1 applies as a quadratic form twice at the vector dTA plus grad Q. And the terms involving the initial condition is unchanged, dTA of V0. We keep the same constraint as before, that A should be divergence free and should vanish at the final time. But we have also this inequality constraint that this field of symmetric matrices should be non-negative, otherwise you get plus infinity. Okay, so the supremum will be acting only on the vector field A for which you have this inequality constraint. And there is an even better way to write this problem, which is written here. And let me move a little bit forward. And here we just define this matrix here, E minus this matrix here. We write it as G, and we define the capital Q to be just dTA plus grad Q. So the Lagrangian is nothing but that -1/2 of Q, G minus 1 Q plus QV0. You see that the term involving grad Q drops in the last term because V0 is divergence free. So we are left with this very simplified Lagrangian. And of course, there is a compatibility condition between G and Q due to the structure of G and Q. And we just get something that we almost saw before. So this kind of transport looking equation, if you field, I mean, the second formulation of the transport equation I mentioned for Riemannian metrics. However, the right-hand side is completely different because this has to do with incompressible fluid mechanics. And of course, this equation has, it's a kind of conservation law, so you cannot take, you are confined in the sub vector fields of the space of subspace of the space of Riemannian metrics because of this property that G derives from a potential. So of course, general Riemannian matrix has no reason to be written this way. So this is not a very good candidate for a transport equation. And of course, this looks very much like an optimal transport problem. Once you define the velocity field to be just as we did in the scalar case, to write Q to be the product, to be the metric acting on V. And you remember that when we did the same calculation for the transportation of Riemannian metrics, we had exactly the same terms, but with a very different right-hand side involving the Christoffel symbol. So in some sense, surprisingly enough, this problem, which has absolutely nothing to do with the framework, is providing interesting information because in a natural way, we get some kind of a generalization of the optimal transport problem for fields of symmetric non-negative matrices. And this is why I got interested in these issues. Okay, so now we have a game where we can play with different ideas. We have the idea of unbalanced optimal transport, the idea of Riemannian metrics, and then we played with these kind of ideas. And this is why we've this is what I wrote here. And with Dmitry, we found a good idea. We were not entirely satisfied by this idea, but anyway, and actually, I must confess that we discovered that in the paper of Chen, Georgiou, and Tenenbaum, actually they got the same idea, but the paper is mostly related to quantum mechanics, and so it's not so obvious to see it if you look at the paper at the first glance. Anyway, our goal was to design a genuine distance, and we were able to do it, and to prove what, for instance, fails completely when you do the L2 transportation theory of scalar function, which is a very simple problem where very easily you can end up with totally degenerate distance. But in this case, thanks to this rather simple-minded formula where so maybe let me summarize the idea. So we just write, we keep the first part of the transport equation for Riemannian matrices, Riemannian matrix. And here we put this generalization of the source term that we know in unbalanced transportation theory, where we just multiply the matrix G by this control matrix U, and we symmetrize that, and which is exactly what we started with at the beginning of the lecture. Okay, and I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this very beautiful talk. I mean, connecting things and very deep science and mathematics in a very elegant way. That's really great. So do we have questions from the audience? If you have questions, you can raise your hands maybe, and I will try to find you. Or I don't see any question.
Ah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, hi, Kelvin.
Giuseppe?
Yeah, thank you.
You have a question?
Yeah. Is there any explicit static formulation at the end of the course, or some guess of what could be? And thank you very much for the nice...
Yeah, I guess this is Giuseppe Savare speaking, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I don't see you, so I thought that somebody else was speaking, and then I recognize your voice. Okay, of course, like in the unbalanced transportation techniques, if you drop the drift term, you get the Bures metric, and then you can have a explicit calculation like in the Hellinger case, right? However, in the full setting, we didn't try that so much, actually. I don't know. However, we have a conic version of that, like you did for the Kantorovich-Hellinger metric. So this is the blind spot for me. So I'm not really familiar with this conic version. I know that François-Xavier Viala is very fond of it, and but you can do this kind of reduction, yes. So this works. However, explicit formulae, I'm not so sure. I remember that François-Xavier mentioned to me some kind of paradoxical situation when we have a crossing of density fields. Something like that. So maybe this is vaguely what you have in mind. I don't know. So Giuseppe, so, yeah.
No, I have no idea in mind. Just.
But of course, my opinion is this field is still really at the very preliminary stage. So I'm not even sure that, for instance, the reaction term. Well, it looks like a natural generalization of Kantorovich-Hellinger, but you know, generalization you never know. So there might be another way of writing things. Yeah. So there is no claim that that's a definitive formula. As it, you know, unbalanced optimal transportation, we are almost sure that the Hellinger-Kantorovich is one of the very best possibilities, just like in the optimal transportation problem. So there is very little room left. Here, I think there is a lot of room left. Yeah. And this is why I have some vague hope that consideration related to general relativity might help.
So we have Julien Barret.
Oh.
In sand.
Hi, Jan. Thank you very much for the talk. I'm happy to see you.
Yeah.
I have a question. So we know that the MK2, Monch-Kantorovich 2 distance is very much related to Brownian motions and large deviations. So there are deep connections. Could it be also an inspiration to generalization?
Yeah, actually in the paper we discussed that a little bit. I would say that this was, you remember I mentioned at the beginning the people like Caroline Maass and Chen Georgiou and Tannenbaum, and they are very much interested in these issues.
Okay.
And in particular in Caroline Maass, clearly there is theories of that sort. So this is not the same theory as this one. This is much more sophisticated because there is a deep involvement of quantum mechanics. And in particular, the Lindblad equation is really very much involved in that. And with Dmitry, we decided to stay away from Lindblad equation and because we wanted to have a real distance. And however, they can compute things of this sort. So you can find some kind of generalization of the log Sobolev inequalities and these kind of things. Yes. So I would, especially because I know that you know a lot about quantum mechanics. So if you are ready to make the effort of this sort, the paper by Caroline and Maass would be very interesting. And the paper by Goltz and Paul are also very, very much related to quantum mechanics, but we don't know exactly the relationship. So in some sense, we have several attempts to turn around the same problem, but we still don't know the deep connection between them. And even inside quantum mechanics, the approach of Goltz and Paul looks like quite different from the one of Caroline and Maass.
Thank you very much.
Bob Pego raised his hand.
Thanks very much, Jan, for this inspiring talk. Okay, this may be just completely off the wall, but I'm hearing the words general relativity and quantum mechanics in the same breath. And so can you speculate on what does this have something to do with unified field theory?
Well, actually, for me, it was like a motivation to this kind of work because, of course, there was the idea of reducing, of course, general relativity to some kind of optimal transportation. But of course, this is super naive because once again, this transport equation is almost irrelevant in general relativity because you have to discuss metrics up to change of coordinates. So this is a special change of coordinates. So it doesn't change anything. But as I said, there is still a way open to butchery. That's if you are butcherizing the Lagrangian of general relativity, you might get something interesting. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, you keep, for instance, general relativity is about Lorentzian manifold and you forget completely that they are Lorentzian and you think they are just Riemannian manifold evolving in time in a stupid way and you destroy the covariance. So this might be a good way to do. And let me again mention that there is a connection between optimal transport and general relativity with this recent work I mentioned of Robert McCann and also, I forgot the name of the people. I think it's Mondino. And but the idea, I mean, is much more based on the idea of Lodge, Sturm, Villani about the characterization of the Ricci tensor in terms of convexity of the entropy, the Boltzmann entropy in the framework of optimal transportation. And they have been able to do some generalization of that. which is quite amazing. Actually, I was very surprised that they could do such an amazing thing, but it's a little bit too complicated for me. So I would like something much more straightforward. So I'm still expecting something. So by the way, sorry, I don't see the name. So who was speaking?
Bob Pego.
Yeah, I think I recognize the voice, but I was not totally sure. Yes.
Bob Pego was
Sorry, maybe I don't. For some reason, I don't see the name of the people when they ask questions.
Okay. Other question? Actually, I have one.
Thank you.
I mean, I have several, but let's focus on one. So you talk about the possibility to work also with Cauchy problem and the link with convex integration, which also involve linear equation and convex constraint, right? By your minimization problem, would it give a sort of way to
actually, that's
a good one?
Afterwards, it's quite straightforward. So because I gave you let's say, let me go back. No, this was at the very end. Sorry. Sorry. Yes. So, I told you that the dual problem is concave. So therefore you can use regular convexity duality to get the dual of the dual. Okay, so you get in some sense the convex envelope of the first one. And then you see that this amounts to look at a subsolution of the Euler equation in the sense of convex integration. And what substitute for V tensor V is another field of symmetric matrices. Okay. And which is subject to the constraint that these fields should be larger in the sense of symmetric matrices than V tensor V. And what you minimize is no longer V square, but the trace of this matrix. So this matrix is dual to the one I wrote. So if I call it M, this amounts to do the minimization of 1/2 of the trace of M, space-time integrated, for all subsolution in the sense of geometric integration. So it's a kind of quite stupid idea. So it's a selection principle, and I never got a full interaction with the convex integration people. I mean, they had some criticism. Actually, you were part of this criticism, I remember, some years ago. And they actually ask exactly the same question as you. They start by saying, well, but you get 0 by doing this. But of course, this has to do with the fact that the initial condition is taken into account in a very special way. And so at this point, I don't know how much it is. I know that there is a much more sophisticated concept of generalized solution, which was launched a few years ago by Edward Feiersel and collaborators, which is much less naive than the classical concept of dissipative solution in the sense of Lyons. And I don't know, maybe this is like a much trivial ideas, but you could formulate that this way. Yes, of course, yes. And at least I would say there is, I never clarify that. I can do the calculation in the case where V0 is continuous. So it is not entirely clear that this is still true for V0 equal L2 in L2. So maybe there is a contradiction. This may be the explanation of the contradiction. So you get this complete duality result. No, I mean, this part is okay. But if you want to get the interpretation of the convexify problem in terms of subsolution, you have to, at least at the level I achieved, you have to assume that V0 is continuous. I don't know if maybe there is something wrong with L2. I don't know. So maybe there is a little margin there. Anyway, what I really loved is the fact that I could get some new type of optimal transportation problem. involving matrices. And of course, with just the drawback that you get this right-hand side, which is constraining G to be deriving from a potential which I don't want in the general situation. Okay, sorry for this very long answer, as usual, to a short and sharp question.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? I don't see anything. Well, then we should thank Jan for this beautiful talk and all this explanation.
And thank you very much for the invitation again. So I was very glad to be in the USA this way.
We hope to make you come one day.
Yeah, but they have to build a fast train first to avoid airplanes.
Through the ocean.
No, Bering Strait. But we need a good agreement with Vladimir Putin also. So this is a project for the peace in the world. So, and maybe we should involve China in the project too.
Very good. And make some transport, optimal transport.
Yeah, it could take not much than 24 hours to do the full trip. So it's very competitive with airplanes and not so costly. So I think this will be epsilon with respect to the Joe Biden plan to do that.
Teleportation would be better.
I think 100 billions is certainly large enough to do that.